See that house? That's where I filmed the first ever cinematic Venom episode.
Okay, I'm gonna try to stay calm. But this is really bad, ladies and gentlemen. Now I'll grant you, it's not as bad as everybody says.
How can I just throw it all away? Seems like so long ago. Just look at that lighting. I had no idea what I was doing. Still don't really, do I?
Oh, they finally put a receiver in here. Huh. Hello?
What's your favorite scary movie?
2?
What?
Scary Movie 2. It's pretty good.
No, that's not what I meant.
Hello?
What's your favorite horror movie?
Oh, The Fly.
Wait, which one?
1986.
In 1984, who played the horror classic?
Robert Englund.
Oh. In what year did Bela Lugosi revolutionize the iconic...
1931.
In 1922, who portrayed the terrifying...
Max Schreck.
Okay, in 2004, who began a series as the scary...
Tobin Bell.
Who was the killer in 1974?
Leatherface.
Who was the murderer in the original Friday the 13th?
Pamela Voorhees.
In 1941, which Universal
Wolfman.
Which Steven Spielberg
Jaws.
film? In 1931, Boris Karloff
Frankenstein.
Which 1935 sequel to
Bride.
this? Who took over as the Count in 1958's version of Dracula?
Christopher Lee.
You know what? Screw you! I've got your friend Craig! And if you ever want to see him again, you must go back to where it all began.
Let's finish this. That's better. Home sweet home. And everything's back to normal. Alice? Hi, Rob. You need to fulfill your destiny, dude. Become one of us. Yeah. Invasion of the Bodysnatchers tells the story of a psychiatrist who has to deal with a hysterical crazy man who tries to plead his sanity. This leads to his story in flashback mode where the guy, Miles, played by Kevin McCarthy, is from a town called Santa Mira, the fictional place that Halloween 3 stole.
Wonderful.
Several locals are convinced that their loved ones are not their loved ones and they've somehow been replaced with identical doubles. He seeks help with his ex-girlfriend Becky, played by Dana Winter, but the local doctor assures him that these people are just delusional. However, corpses are soon discovered that resemble some of the locals to a T. How do you resemble someone to a T? Oh no, they resemble them like an S.
Can't you see that?
But they soon vanish before discovering giant pods emerging the doubles. Furthermore, they realise that the locals are being replaced as they sleep. Unfortunately, Miles and Becky are the only humans left in a town completely taken over by the emotionless doubles. They try to flee, but during the escape, Becky even dozes off and becomes one, leading to Miles running to the doctor from the start of the film. But naturally, they think he's crazy. Until they hear about some pods.
They look like great big seed pods.
Seed pod.
Where was the truck coming from?
Santa Mira.
That's literally it. What? You are nuts. Don't tell us your ridiculous story. What's that? Pods? Pods? Oh, you are telling the truth. Call the FBI.
You don't believe a word of this, do you?
And the film literally ends ambiguously as they barricade off the town and we really don't know what happens. The film was based off of the novel The Bodysnatchers, but unlike the movie, the book ends with the aliens, who don't live any longer than 5 years, leaving planet Earth, realizing how strong the human race is against them. Despite the aliens already outnumbering and overpowering them this quickly.
What's going on?
The film originally had a budget of $454,864 and was going to be shot in just 24 days, but the studio wanted some cuts, so it only cost $350,000 with only $15,000 spent on the special effects and was filmed in an amazing 20 days. But casting was also an issue. Producer Walter Wanger wanted Gig Young, Dick Powell or Joseph Cotton for the part of Miles, and Anne Bancroft, Donna Reed, Kim Hunter or Vera Miles for Becky, but they just couldn't afford stars that big. They went for Richard Kiley, but he actually turned them down, leading to McCarthy being cast, who only had a few credits to his name at this point, as well as Dana Winter, who had only been on television. McCarthy, however, was not a fan of the script, feeling like the characters weren't adapted for the film very well and had bland dialogue and no depth.
Quit acting like a writer. What's going on?
Dana Winter, however, loved the production, claiming that everyone was so friendly and welcoming to her as a newcomer, but actress Carolyn Jones was the exception, being unfriendly and unhelpful the entire time.
I don't know, maybe I clown around too much.
They also wanted to shoot the movie in Mill Valley, California, not Hill Valley. Although that would have been awesome.
You're gonna see some serious shit.
The town that's described in the book, but the location was far too expensive, so they had to find lookalikes, but most of it was actually shot in a studio. Filming actually went over schedule by 3 days, lasting between March the 23rd, 1955 and April the 27th. And the film was shot incredibly fast paced, the cast and crew working 6 days a week with very little time for any rests. It was originally titled The Bodysnatchers, but was changed to avoid confusion with the 1945 film with an almost identical name. Wanger couldn't come up with a different title, so the studio went with They Come From Another World, but director Don Siegel objected and suggested either Better Off Dead or Sleep No More. Wanger thought up Evil in the Night or World in Danger, but the studio decided no, these are all really stupid, and went with Invasion of the Bodysnatchers. But when it was released in France, it was incorrectly translated to L'Invasion des Profanateurs des Sepultures. I apologise for that awful pronunciation, alright? Can you believe I have a GCSE in French? Which is actually translated as Invasion of the Defilers of Tombs. And that's a mistake that still stands to this day.
It isn't finished.
Wanger really wanted... I'm sorry, I just can't keep saying the name seriously. Wanger.
No, ma'am. That comes later.
Wanger really wanted a voiceover narration to introduce Miles' character and even tried his best to persuade Orson Welles to provide it, but he refused. He then tried science fiction author Ray Bradbury, but again was unsuccessful. There are conflicting reports about the movie's first few screenings. Some say it was a big hit, others say audiences just couldn't follow the film or laughed at moments that were supposed to be scary. Due to this, the studio cut out some of the comedy as it wasn't customary back then to mix humour with horror, and they also had to cut out any nudity whatsoever as well. But the next screening also didn't go down too well. The ending was also vastly different to the one that we saw. As Miles escaped Santa Mira, it was originally going to end with him screaming as a truck full of the giant pods passes by. The studio hated this as it was a depressing ending, although left ambiguous, implied that the aliens took over the world and everyone died. This was when they added Miles telling the story in flashback mode. Some loved the decision, but Siegel and Wanger hated it and felt like it completely ruined their movie.
This is the oddest thing I ever heard of.
In fact, production designer Tad Hayworth was so angry he wrote a letter to the studio head claiming that they were destroying the film. He had worked with horror icon Alfred Hitchcock several times and he vowed that Hitchcock would have given anything to have made a film that scary.
Thanks.
Invasion of the Bodysnatchers was released on February the 5th, 1956, and many cinemas displayed papier-mâché pods above the entrances and lobbies. The movie made $1 million in just the first month and $2.5 million its first year. And of course, people try to find a hidden meaning, believing that the movie was a political metaphor of America turning a blind eye to communism and some other political crap that wasn't there, because apparently we can't just have a scary movie anymore. It always has to be a social commentary on something. Even Kevin McCarthy and Jack Finney, who wrote the original novel, said there's clearly no political connotations involved. It's just a scary film.
Well, what do you make of it?
The director has said it was more of a psychological metaphor than a political one, as the pod people are emotionless. There's a scene where Miles kisses Becky, but she barely responds, so he knows she's turned, and he said he's kissed many pod people in the past, and it's a very real sequence.
It wasn't.
Upon first release, the movie was actually ignored, but was later considered a classic and one of the best films from 1956. Time Out called it one of the most resonant and one of the simplest in the horror sci-fi genre. The American Film Institute picked it as the 9th greatest sci-fi movie in history. Bravo put it as the 88th scariest movie moment ever for that scene. And the Chicago Film Critics Association named it the 29th scariest movie ever made. And of course, it was then remade in 1978, where McCarthy even reprises his role as Miles, and again in 1993, and 2007. And another remake at the hands of Warner Brothers is even in the damn works.
I think we could all use a drink.
The movie is so iconic, it was actually this film that began the famous term of pod people, but director Don Siegel kinda took it a bit too far. He claims he once crept into Dana Winter's house and left a pod under her bed, and she became incredibly hysterical once she found it.
I'm not insane!
However, Dana denies this and says he simply left it on her doorstep. Oh, well that's much better.
Thank you.
But the biggest travesty of this movie?
What's the matter, Mrs. Grimaldi?
It's nothing, he just don't want to go to school.
He doesn't want to go to school. Terrible grammar.
That's strange. She was in to see you too last Friday, and I tried to get her to go see Doc Percy, but she wouldn't.
Oh, you want Dr. Percy? With my special stethoscope. And I also have a thermometer.
The film is quite short, so they really don't wait around. It pretty much instantly grabs your attention right off the bat. Straight away, this kid is adamant that his mother is not his mother. It's already really intense and creepy. But the direction is so good. The music turns sinister. We get this awesome shot of his shadow, which is a really strong introduction to this character who's probably an alien. And honestly, even to today's standards, this is terrifying. The pod body thing starts to move and wake up, and I nearly shit out my colon. Oh, and that dude was an alien. Called it. But there's so many things done in this film that you can tell was mimicked for years afterwards. They find another body, and the match he's holding for light blows out, which is a really cool and creepy effect. And it even invented the annoying skeptic who doesn't believe any other scary stories. Except this time, the dialogue is actually really intelligent, makes sense, and is just well done.
You'd seen a dead man at Jack's, an average-sized man. The face in death was smooth and unlined, bland in expression, which often happens. You had just become aware of a curious, unexplainable epidemic mass hysteria. Men, women, and children suddenly convinced themselves that their relatives weren't their relatives at all. So your mind started playing tricks, and reality became unreality.
But the story works so well because anytime a character shows up, you immediately wonder whether or not they're a pod person. You're on the edge of your seat trying to figure out who is or isn't an alien. It's genius. And as we see the pods hatch, which by the way had to be shot in one take, the eerie orchestral music is amazing. This scene is so intense and I love it.
We're gonna have to search every building, every house in town. Men, women, and children are gonna have to be examined. We've got some phoning to do.
Well, I'm gonna stay right here where I can watch them.
Oh, he is so dead. The acting is incredible. Kevin McCarthy nails this performance. He can't bring himself to stab the bodies and has to fight before eventually giving in. But I love shots like this. The entire townsfolk gathering around the centre of town and Just wow, man. This film is really creepy and it still holds up so well.
Less than a month ago, Santa Mira was like any other town. People with nothing but problems. Then out of the sky came a solution. Seeds drifting through space for years took root in a farmer's field. From the seeds came pods, which have the power to reproduce themselves in the exact likeness of any form of life.
So that's how it began.
This is so creepy. Although I feel like the exposition scene drags on a bit too long though. Just move on! I also thought that I'd predicted it and I called Becky being a pod person this entire time.
Our only hope is to make it to the highway.
And fire our director for dubbing me without my voice moving. But as they flee from the townsfolk, it's such an intense chase scene. You really do root for them to make it out okay, even though I thought that she was an alien. They hide under the floorboards and you're begging for them to not get noticed. The suspense in this film is incredible.
Becky, where are you?
I'm here, Miles.
And I'm an alien. Alright, she turns into one later, but still called it! The film is actually a classic that still holds up. The acting is top notch, the suspense is great, and it's just an all-around scary tale.